I call to order this regular meeting of the Scottsdale Unified School District Number 48 Governing Board and a public hearing. Start with a roll call vote from my far right.
Zach Lindsay.
Patty Beckman.
I'm Julie Sanowski. Is Dr. Hurtwell's in the cloud?
I don't know.
We received notice that Dr. Hurtwells would be joining us remotely. Is Dr. Hurtwells, are you in the cloud? Not hearing a response? Well, we do have a quorum, so we will start our meeting. At this time, we will have a presentation of revision number 1 of the 2022-2023 expenditure budget. Shannon Crozier.
Are they pulling it up or am I pulling it up? All right. Good evening, Board President Sanowski, members of the board and community. Tonight we are meeting to look at revision number 1 for the 22-23 expenditure budget. We generally do the revised budget in December, and the statute requires that if you need to reduce your budget by 1%, you're required to do this. We are not reducing our budget tonight. We are increasing our budget. So this wasn't a requirement, but because our timeline generally says that we do our revision in December, we felt like this was a good time to keep with that tradition of what we generally do, as well as the fact that I'm excited to stand up here tonight and say that we are actually increasing the budget and we're increasing it more than I thought we would be. So that's why we're here tonight. When we look at the budget, start with the significant changes. This was an interesting budget when we did it. So what we're showing here is what our original projections were for ADM. Original projections being in March, April, when we were talking about what do we think we're going to have for contracts. The state did not have a budget for us to use when we got ready to do the proposed and adopted, so we had to use the prior year base level or amount per student. So because of that, we purposefully had to bump up the ADM to get it to where we thought it would be, to get us to our RCL, or revenue control limit, of what we anticipated it being, because we had to use the old forms. So when we're looking at the significant changes with average daily membership, this is looking at what we originally thought would happen, what we would have been using on the proposed and adopted budget had we had the right amount per student to use and the correct forms. But that wasn't done by the state in time. So looking at that, preschool was pretty much, we're off a little bit. K-8, we have jumped significantly more than what we thought. And then a little bit of a decrease within 9 through 12. So I'm happy to say that right now, we are 117 ADM up from what we originally thought we'd be in March of last year. That's not to say our ADM from last year is down. We're just not down as much as we had originally projected it to be. So that's great news. And we keep looking at reports to see where we're doing. We'll keep watching that. But at this point, we're up from where we originally thought we were going to be. So that's positive news. When we're looking at the maintenance and operations, this increase is going from $177 million to over $183 million, which is an increase of 5.8. Again, we knew that we'd be increasing this. We knew that that's why we came back to the board in August, September, and said, hey, we'd like to go back and reevaluate what our salaries are going to be, because we know now what the state's going to do, and we knew it was going to be more. This is actually more than what we thought that was going to be when we originally sent that to the board earlier this fall. So what contributed to that? Again, we have an increase in ADM right now. The revenue control limit increased, obviously because an increase in students, but also because the amount per student is higher than what we originally anticipated when we brought the proposed over. In fact, that increase from what we proposed, or the adopted, to this revision is $329 per student more than what we originally thought. So those two things together make a big difference, and that's why we've increased that budget. Additionally, we had anticipated a $15 million carry forward. And we are working on bringing that down. That is too high of a carry forward. It's one-time monies. So it's not like something we can just throw salaries to, because once we use it once, it's gone. But we did carry over a little bit more than what we anticipated. So there's also some additional revenue there within M&O. Looking at our other funds, additional assistance. This is money from the state for items like capital. They also, when they did their adopted budget for us, they increased the amount per student for textbooks and capital items. And so because of that, it increased our budget by $1.1 million from the state. Additionally, we carried over a little bit more than what we anticipated when we did the adopted budget. And some of that, we do an adopted budget. We put that together in May, and we have a lot of expenditures that we pay in through the end of August. What we're finding with capital is there's a long lead time that's happening, and so even though purchase orders were in, we just didn't receive the items by June 30th, which means we have to carry that budget over. We have to issue POs in the new year. And so that's part of the reason why that carryover is higher than we originally anticipated, is because we had quite a few projects that we knew were rolled over because they weren't completed or we didn't receive the items by June 30th. Classroom Site Fund increased by $7 million. That's not because we got more money into Classroom Site Fund. When I did the proposed and adopted budget, I had anticipated possibly paying out the 301 monies for performance pay to teachers in the year that it was received, which would have been last school year, because we had to follow the adopted policy that we did tests and we couldn't pay out that amount based on what was approved as our 301 policy. We couldn't pay that out until the test scores were done and we had evaluations back on teachers, that we had to go back to our previous practice, which was before COVID. You received that money in August and usually October. So that $7 million is just carry forward. It's the $7 million that we use to pay out performance pay in October and November of this school year. So that's why that carried over. Our federal grants increased by $3.6 million. We had an increase in several of our federal grants. In addition, we received a 100-day in-person grant, which is a little over $2 million, and so that bumped that up a little bit. And then our state grants increased by $529. And a lot of that is, again, when we did that proposed and adopted budget, we're guessing on what the rollover is going to be. We don't know until the end of the year. So this is just factoring in what those rollover monies were going to be. And we have crossover grants that don't actually end until September 30th in some cases. So with that, those are the major changes within the budget. All positive things, adding more to the budget. So with that, I'll take questions.
Governing board members, any questions for Shannon? Board member Beckman? No. Any others? Board member Greenberg?
So the expenditures that we just showed on there, though, that anticipates that the AEL would be waived for this school year, correct?
That budget anticipates that we will receive the full funding that the state allocated to us for all of our students, and that AEL would be addressed. If AEL or aggregate expenditure limit is not addressed, then we would be required to reduce our budget by $31 million.
So we're not adding $5 million, but because we are performing better than projected, we're able to increase our revenue control limit by about $5 million. But should the AEL not be passed, we would actually have to reduce our budget by $30 million.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep, this is based off of the assumption that the state is going to provide the funding that they allocated to K-12 when they did their state budget.
What percent of our budget is that, about 17%?
Yeah, about 16, 17%.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And it's great news that although we have, we have lost enrollment, the fact of the matter is our ADM has actually not decreased as great. And I think hopefully we can continue that trend year over year to the point that we start seeing a return to positive ADM growth.
I would sure like that.
Thank you, Board Member Greenberg. And Shannon, thank you. Seeing that there are no other board, Vice President Dr. Harwells, do you have any comments? I know she.
No, I do not.
You do not. Okay, thank you, Dr. Harwells. Seeing that there are no other comments from board members, do any members of the public, if there are any members of the public that would like to address this budgetary revision outlined here tonight, now would be your chance to do that. Again, specifically for the budgetary revisions outlined here. Okay, Seeing that there are no requests to comment on the budgetary revisions, at this time, I would like to ask for a motion to approve the presentation revision topic of the 22-23 expenditure budget.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And we will move on with our meeting by adjourning the public hearing first, and then we will start up with our regular governing board meeting. At this time, I ask for a motion to end and adjourn this public hearing.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor to adjourn this public hearing, say aye.
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 Motion to adjourn passes 5-0. Meeting is adjourned at 6:13 PM. And at this time, I call to order this regular meeting of the Scottsdale Unified School District Number 48 Governing Board. I ask for a roll call, starting from my far right.
Zach Lindsay.
Jan Michael Greenberg.
Patty Beckman.
Libby Hart-Wells.
And Julie Stanowski. All governing board members are present. At this time, I'd like Board Member Beckman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Board Member Beckman. All right, at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
President Sanowski, may I make a motion to move governing board reports to the end of the agenda for the evening to right in front of agenda item 13, future agenda items? Yeah.
Board Member Beckman, you're asking if we could move it to,
The end of the agenda, in the essence of time for the individuals in the room, I'd like to move governing board reports, item number 7, to the end of the agenda before item number 13, future agenda items.
is anyone in opposition of that?
No, but I wonder whether it wouldn't be worthwhile to move information discussion item 10B to occur after item 6, student and staff recognitions, so prior to the public comments. Is there? Action.
Member Greenberg, go ahead, can you repeat that?
Yeah, information discussion item 10B, facility rental policy manual revision and update to occur after item 6, student and staff recognitions and celebrations. So that is to occur prior to public comments. If we don't want to do that, that's fine. It's just a recommendation because I think from what I gather, there's a lot of public comment interest on that specific item.
I'm good with that. Is anyone opposed to doing that? Okay, so there's been a request to move governing board reports to right before upcoming meetings. And there has been a request also to move facility rental policy manual revision update information and discussion item to right after student and staff recognitions and celebrations. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct. Okay. Thank you. That's very thoughtful. Both of those are. Considering we have a room full of first-time guests at our board meeting this evening. There have been some motions made. Can I have a second first for Board Member Beckman's change to move governing board reports?
do just one motion.
Can we do one motion to approve both? Okay.
Both agendas modified.
Yep, okay. At this time, I ask for a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor to approve the agenda as amended, say aye.
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 That motion passes 5-0. Thanks for that thoughtful input. Okay. All right, I am going to read for all of our guests here this evening the meeting decorum statement. Citizens attending and/or participating Scottsdale Unified School District meetings, either in person, virtually, or telephonically, are required to observe the same rules of order and decorum applicable to members of the governing board and staff. Unauthorized remarks or demonstrations from members of the audience, yells, outbursts, and/or disruptions are not permitted. Members of the public are not allowed to approach the dais at any time while the governing board meeting is in session without express permission from the governing board president. All right, at this time, the agenda has been approved as amended, and we are going to start with our student staff recognitions and celebrations. Dr. Menzel.
Well, good evening, President Sinowski, Vice President Hartwells, who's in the cloud, and governing board members. Tonight, we have a combination of annual, seemingly annual, and new celebrations to share with you. We'll kick things off by introducing you to two of our students who recently received accolades from the mayor of our fine city. Dr. Kim Dodds-Karen, our Director of Teaching and Learning, is here to introduce us to them. Dr. Dodds-Karen.
Good evening, governing board members, Dr. Menzel, President Sinowski, Vice President Hartwells in the cloud, everyone present tonight, and of course, Ms. Wagner. I'd like to invite students Cash Weir and Bryn Smith to the podium. And Principal Akbari, if you can come up. I'm not sure if Principal Miller is here. And then Teacher Melissa Stoka and Teresa Caltabiano, if you can come on up as well. You have an important role in this. Okay. Each year, the mayor of Scottsdale sponsors a writing, art, and video competition for local K-12 students in which they express their understanding of a particular aspect of the U.S. Constitution. As one of our nation's founding documents, I suppose it can be said that this competition is a document-based question type of assignment, which it should be a familiar exercise for our students. This year, 1st through 5th grade students were asked to describe what the First Amendment means to them. 6th through 8th graders were asked to explain how a constitutional amendment of their choice benefits U.S. citizens or safeguards our communities. And lastly, high school students were asked how the Constitution and its amendments protect our form of government and necessitates our participation. I'm pleased to report that SUSD students did very well in Mayor Ortega's competition again this year, with 8 students receiving top awards for categories in which they submitted entries, and another 15 taking 2nd and 3rd place honors. To end the semester, this is a very busy time for our families, but we are pleased that 2 of our first place winners are here to join us this evening. First place! That's pretty darn awesome. Cash is a 5th grade student at Cochise Elementary, and Bryn is an 8th grade student at Desert Canyon Middle School.
7th grade.
7th grade. Well, we promoted you because you did so well on this assignment. Both Cash and Bryn are winners of this essay contest, and for their grade levels, we are very proud of your work. On the screen, you can also see additional students throughout SUSD who were recognized, and again, we are proud of all of our students, but we are very proud of you for receiving first place awards. Congratulations to you both, and you received something special. You received what we call a challenge coin of excellence. So we're really proud of you. And to you too, our almost promoted 8th grader. We expect another submission next year. And to our teachers, thank you for allowing time in your classroom for our students to write and participate in this competition. Thank you.
Congratulations, Bryn and Cash, and we hope you'll keep writing. Next up is one of those first of celebrations to which I referred earlier. As you're aware, the Arizona State Board of Education recently issued school letter grades for the first time since the 2018-2019 school year. We're pleased to report, as was noted in the November SUSD source, that 27 of our schools, and at the end of this week, most likely 28, received either an A or a B letter grade from the state of Arizona for student achievement and growth in student learning. That is quite an accomplishment coming off the learning and instructional challenges of the pandemic for students and teachers alike over the past 2 years. We are proud to say that overall, SUSD students and schools are performing better than their statewide peers. We want to take this occasion to bring attention to a particularly bright spot among those recently issued letter grades, and that is the performance of our 9 Title I schools. To present the next celebration, we welcome our Interim Executive Director of Elementary Education, Margaret Cerna. Margaret?
Good morning, Board President, Dr. Menzel, Gladys. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be standing up here. 4 years ago, Dr. Menzel came up and said, Margaret, I would like for you to do the magic at Tavon at all our Title I schools. Well, we have done it, much to the work of the principals, the students, the teachers. I'd also like to thank Teaching and Learning. Kim Dodds has been there with us every step of the way. Our ELD numbers are incredible, the kids that we have exited. So it's very successful. This is the one thing I can say is our ELD kids are doing very, very well. It's once they leave the program that they start to falter, but we're working on that. You may ask, why did our schools go up? I've got a couple of reasons. The first one is the Beyond Move On when reading. Just to let you know, Title I was the only program that proceeded during this summer of pandemic. We went online one-on-one with students, and it was successful beyond our dreams. Also, we have changed the role of the reading specialists. The reading specialists at our Title I schools have now become reading caseworkers. So when a child first enters Beyond Move On with reading, kindergarten first, second, we progress monitor them till they leave 5th grade. Then they're progress monitored again in middle school all the way to high school. The principals are so responsive, and boy, they take this seriously. And I just want to thank them. Can they please come up here, principals? Title I principals and any teachers?
And also our Title I specialists, if you could come up.
Anybody that's Title I or DSEG?
It's a crew.
Pre-pandemic, we had almost all Cs, some Bs, we even had a D. And the D turned into an A. And I want to thank Blake Winsky and Chuck and Tala. That's nothing short of a miracle. So I want to thank you for your support. What a great way to end my career, because, you know, right now, there's no North and South. We're all A's and B's. And that is always what I have strived for. So thank you. Also, I'd like to thank Sean. He's my partner in crime. We do a lot together. I'm the one that thinks about the ideas. He's the one that implements them. So Sean, would you like to say something?
Yes. Again, I just want to say a huge congratulations to our schools. I was asked today, or I talked to one of our principals today about the work that's been done, and I said the one thing that I know is that this happens because of the great teachers and leadership we have in our schools. And so I want to thank our principals and our Title I specialists and our instructional leaders and our teacher leaders who have done just a fantastic job to make this possible. So thank you.
Cindy Bachner said that some of our schools missed it by a whisper. So I promise you, we're not going to be whispering next year. We're going to be shouting and yelling, and we're going to get some more A's. So thank you.
We have
We have coins. Oh, can I have my
So
principals?
we have challenge coins for our principals.
Congratulations.
Well, congratulations to our principals and your staff for the fine work that you've done. We always recognize that there's room for improvement, but to have all of our title schools be A or B rated is significant, and we're proud of your accomplishments. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next two celebrations fall to Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, Dr. Melissa Sackos. Dr. Sackos.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel, and good evening, President Sanowski, Vice President Hartwells, governing board members, and Ms. Wagner, and all of our guests here this evening. As you know, SUSD wrapped up its observance and celebration of Native American Heritage Month with a wonderful cultural event that was held here, right here at Coronado High School last week. Native American students attend each of our schools, and one of them is making a name for herself through her local and national work with Indigenous food sovereignty and sustainability. Please welcome Gabriella Nakai, want to make sure I got that pronounced correctly, from Arcadia High School, and Principal Dr. Janelle Dansky. And we'd like to welcome back, come on up. I'd like to welcome back our Native American Education Coordinator, Ms. Cypress. Gabriella is a junior at Arcadia and a former Earth Ambassador with the United National Tribal Youth Association, UNITY. Last month, she was invited to Washington, D.C. and the White House to participate in its 2002 Tribal Youth Forum. These celebrations just get better and better, right? Gabby, would you like to speak to us about that experience? Sure. All right.
I wrote a little speech, and then I also made some handouts. I could pass them out at the end. Good evening, everyone. My name is Gabriella Nakai. I'm a junior at Arcadia High School. I have a few handouts which are being passed out right now about my recent trip to Washington, D.C., where I was invited to attend the White House Tribal Youth Forum. During the admission process, I was nominated to be a moderator for a panel with a few USDA officials. I was granted this opportunity through previous recognition of my work I have done within Indian country with food sovereignty and environmental work. My freshman year, I was selected as a Unity Earth Ambassador. This ambassadorship is through the United National Indian Tribal Youth, which is a national organization and a key part in learning about different Native communities across the country. This new knowledge and help with other Earth Ambassadors, my advisor, and Unity staff gave me a national platform I created a project within my community on and off the reservation where I raised native crops and then redistributed their seeds from crops to my Native community. Growing crops in their native environment, like crops traditionally grown in the Southwest, are going to be important moving forward into the drought. I'm trying to learn how to raise them young and use my Indigenous knowledge and teachings to grow and develop as a student, but also as a person. From the work I did in my community and because of the White House Tribal Youth Forum, and the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, invited me to a celebration of Native American Heritage Month where I got to meet many role models like Secretary Deb Haaland, one of President Biden's cabinet members, and so many others. I could not have done this without my support system at SUSD, Ms. Cypress and Ms. Sosi, who went out of their ways to ensure my attendance at these events in DC. Also, my teachers at Arcadia for supporting me and helping me grow and learn as a student and helping me become practically better in any way imaginable. Let me know if you have any questions. I would love to answer them.
Board Member Beckman, don't move.
Oh, Ms. Cypress, would you like to say a couple words about Gabby? You can just give her a little break. You're good, you're good.
I'll just say something. I just want to say thank you for representing SUSD so well. What a privilege to see what you have done and what you're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I was going to say a couple of words. Gabby has been such an influence to our students at Arcadia and amongst other Native students and to the younger generation. I am so privileged to get to know Gabby. I mean, we don't speak to each other all the time, but whenever we see each other, it's, hi, how you doing? And we talk about things. I love hearing about what she's doing in our community, amongst our Native community, and in our SUSD community. So I could never, I don't have the words. I mean, I'm holding back tears because I am just so proud of this woman. And I also want to take a moment here. It's her parents. That is the foundation of this young woman. So I'd like to congratulate her.
So Gabby, on behalf of Scottsdale Unified School District, please accept this challenge coin. This is like a secret handshake.
okay.
And then I pass it off to you.
Oh, cool.
Isn't that cool?
Thank you.
For the work that you are doing locally, nationally, and representing Native American youth and your Navajo, and Native Navajo and Choctaw tribes.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Our next celebration falls under what Dr. Menzel earlier called a seemingly annual celebration. Please welcome the Spirit of Arcadia Marching Band, its director, Mr. Jan Gardner, and SUSD Fine Arts Coordinator, Michelle Irvin. All right, wow. SUSD's 5 high school marching bands ended their 2022 season last month, having begun their work early this past summer. 5 and 6 days a week, these dedicated students and the ones here, not here tonight, from Chaparral, Coronado, Desert Mountain, and Saguaro High Schools, drilled hard on their marching, musicianship, and performance skills. All of our bands had a great year, but Michelle is going to tell us briefly a little bit more about the Spirit of Arcadia.
Thank you, Dr. Sakos. It is my pleasure again to bring up these wonderful musicians. This is their 9th state title, so I'd just like to give them a big round of applause because that is incredible. So as you can see with our academic excellence, Jan Gardner leads these hardworking musicians, continuing this great tradition that they have done. But I'd like to take a second to talk about our goal 2 of our strategic plan, which is climate and culture. They competed at the Boda Festival and received 2nd place to Mesa High School. Most groups, if they got their 2nd place, they'd be like, oh. No, these guys, through Mr. Gardner's leadership, lined up in a tunnel, and as Mesa High School left the field, they applauded them, taking back the band director and the principal that was there, so they sent letters to us. And I just think that that shows the incredible leadership of Mr. Gardner, not just teaching them musically and marching, but teaching them how to be great people. So I'm so honored to be here with these group.
Me too.
Okay, Mr. Gardner, you can't hide behind all your students. Come on up here. I think that trophy is taller than you and I.
Oh, yes.
That's pretty taller. Yeah, almost several of us. Mr. Gardner, thank you on behalf of the Scottsdale Unified School District and the community of high school football fans around the valley that so enjoyed seeing and hearing the fruits of your students' labors. Please accept this challenge coin.
Oh, thank you so much.
You like secret handshake. I do it the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a few words quickly. Thank you so much for the opportunity to work with the students in the district, and the support that we get to make sure that we are able to carry out our duties to train these students to be, as Ms. Irvin said, great musicians and great people. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Congratulations, Titans and Mr. Gardner. No pressure, but we're looking forward to celebrating number 10 next year.
All right.
Okay, now we
Thank
can
you.
march out.
All right. We're heading that way.
So before we move to our final celebration of the evening, there are 2 other points of pride that I'd like to point out. Last Friday night, our Desert Mountain varsity football team squared off at home against a really tough team from Higley. It was an exciting football game, one of the best that I've watched this year. Unfortunately, with 3 seconds left, Higley kicked a game-winning field goal, but it was an outstanding performance by the Wolves. And we're so proud of these young men, their coach, Conrad Hamilton, the assistant coaches, and the families that support the team. We expect that they'll be back at it again next year, and we look forward to supporting them. On Saturday night, we had another nail-biter of a football game that was decided in the final minutes. Ultimately, it was the Saguaro Sabercats that prevailed over the number one team in this year's Open Division in Liberty. Again, this was one of those games that was back and forth, but we trailed by 14 points in the second half. And not only did we score a touchdown, but converted a two-point play in order to take the lead and then held on to win. So Saguaro now plays again in the Open Division Championship on Sunday night at Sun Devil Stadium, and we want to send the Sabercats coach, Jason Mons, his assistants, and our students our very best wishes for a repeat performance this Saturday evening. So finally, the last thing on our agenda this evening is it's the last board meeting of our 2022 school year, and we have two board members who are completing their 4-year term of service here in Scottsdale. So 4 years ago, Patty Beckman and Jan Michael Greenberg began their service on this board. They joined the board at a time when there was a lot of disruption following the Birdwell years. There was a lot of angst in the community. And what has been accomplished since they've been on the board is nothing short of significant in many ways. In 2019, Patty Beckman was the board president, and the voters of this community passed an M&O override. That shouldn't be understated, because there have been times in Scottsdale's past where the override hasn't passed. So thank you for that leadership, Patty. And then they turned their attention to finding a new superintendent in 2020. So in February, I met both of you. Actually, I met most of the people at the table through the interview process, and none of us could have imagined in February what we experienced starting in March all the way through the transition. The COVID pandemic impacted all of us in so many ways, but I just want to say from the bottom of my heart that your service to the community, your vision for Scottsdale Unified School District, and the countless hours that you've spent advocating for our students has made a tremendous difference. It's with gratitude and appreciation that we present you with parting gifts as just a small token of our gratitude and appreciation for your service on this board. We're going to take a brief pause so that we can allow some of the other guests who are in the overflow room to come in.
All right, thank you all for attending this evening. At this time, we are going to fast forward our information discussion item specifically relating to facility rental policy manual revision and update. Dennis Rayler is at the podium ready to lead that discussion.
Good evening. President Sanowski, online, Dr. Libby Hart-Wells, members of the board, Dr. Menzel, and lacrosse. So I had a plan for a presentation, and then once it hit the streets, it got chopped up into bits and pieces. So I'm gonna introduce this as a work in progress. We were gonna bring this to you as an action item, but it was in the last days changed to a information item as we take input from the governing board and the community. So if I could just pause for a moment and say that in 6 years, I've never actually been up here and presented anything other than construction. And for Jan Michael and Patty Beckman, it has been an honor with you guys on the board, so thank you. So, to my presentation, that's been chopped up severely. Why this update? Why now? Fees are supposed to be updated annually. With COVID 2 years in a row and 5 different CFOs over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, that did not happen. We also recently, within the last couple of years, went from a 5-page contract, press hard here, to a digital format called School Dude FS Direct. So that is the reason that we are bringing this to the board kind of mid-year. Normally it would come to the board in July for first of the year activity. I've got 6 slides here. I'm going to read word for word to bore everyone to death. I'm kidding. I do want it, though, for the purpose of knowing what the rules are. We'll turn this into a PDF, put it on our website, and so everybody knows what the policy KF, community use of schools, and ARS, I think it's 1105. So a couple of things is that both the policy and the Arizona Revised Statute both mention a reasonable use fee shall be charged for lease of school facilities. If you, on your dais there, I left you several pieces of paper for quick reference. There are facility use agreements from several school districts that are neighboring to us and how they word their classes, how their uses are identified. So you can read that or not, just make sure you recycle when you're done. But the top page, that's really the most important page, and that's something that we started talking about after we started getting some feedback. And I'm just going to skip over this because a lot of this is just old hat. It's just that we are supposed to account for the costs associated with renting our facilities, whether it's custodial staff, security staff. If there's an event that has 5,000 people at it, we're supposed to account for toilet paper, paper towel, soap, and all of that. So nothing too riveting in all of these rules. If you really want to read it, you can come back to it later on. Today I created this, and sometimes we get stuck in what we've always done. And so I started to put together this classification determination matrix. Wow, big title. But basically, how do we apply the rules to everyone? And so I've identified a bunch of our different users and how they are classified. There's one particular group, Arcadia Titan Lacrosse. Anybody know them? That really fall in 2 areas. They fall in that class 1, and they fall in class 2. Now, in those rules that I just sped through, there is conversation of uncompensated use of facilities. I'm going to leave it up to the board and Dr. Menzel to make this decision. I'm giving you the information to the best of my knowledge, but ultimately, I think that lacrosse should land in Class 1. That doesn't mean they get off completely scot-free because, again, people, products, we have to cover those. But if they're practicing on our fields, and in that document that I left for you guys as well is a very robust explanation from Scott Schmitz, right? Schmitz? On what Arcadia means to, and not to leave out Chaparral, because Chaparral's represented here as well. So everyone knows we put a couple $1 million in each one of our stadiums. It costs money to take care of those stadiums. It costs money to take care of our facilities, and that's why rental fees are associated with users. There's a cycle of maintenance for the turf fields that has to be done. Every so many hours, we need to make sure that we're propping those blades back up, making sure they don't get tore up, and all of that costs money. And one might argue one way or another that, well, the district should pay for that. We're all using them, right? Everybody's using them. So that's why facility use fees are there. I haven't done it here in Scottsdale, but when I was at Cave Creek School District, we accounted for every bag of fertilizer, every ounce of water, everything. And then the number of hours that outside users were using our facilities versus our kids that were playing on a playground at Black Mountain Elementary School at the time. And it actually was that our facility users use our facilities more than an elementary recess field. The likes of Hopi, when you look at how many times the kids are out at recess and then calculate I believe Phoenix Rising is over there, and they're there from 5 o'clock until 7 o'clock, and they've got so many hundreds of kids, and when you start looking at those numbers, sometimes that outside user usage is more. In the case of Arcadia and Chaparral, there's always going to be a battle for time on the field. Soccer season, football season, track and field, you name it, there's always someone on our fields. There's almost never a time that our facilities lay dormant. I wish they could, because it would do them some good to rest. But in our case right now, we have a lot of people wanting to use our facilities. So it's really almost not worth going through my slides because I've gotten tons of input, and like I said, presentation only. Class 1 is for those folks that are most directly associated with our school that are not making a profit off of our students. They're there to support our students, and that is certainly the argument for lacrosse at Chaparral and Arcadia. Class 2, and this is where we had the lacrosse programs, is more for the youth programs, I-9 sports, you pick it. There's all kinds of them. Youth sports has got to be the single most significant part of kids' lives. I personally had a soccer club for 7 years in the West Valley. I know what it is to need to generate the revenue to pay for the fields and all of that. But Class 2 is basically those organizations that are not-for-profit, youth programs, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, all of that. Now, you'll see in later slides that I have done significant work to reduce our fees. When you look through those packets, you'll see that the school districts around us are literally all over the board. One of the school districts is $175 an hour for their stadium fields. One of the school districts doesn't allow lacrosse on their fields. They put them on a practice field because they don't want tape, or we were kind enough in Scottsdale to put lacrosse lines on the fields when we built those new stadium fields. So one of the things in our old document was that we charged an exorbitant amount for utilities. And although every dollar adds up, day in, day out, every minute, every hour, every square foot, every acre, what I've tried to illustrate here is that in the smaller scheme of things, it's fairly insignificant. The majority of our electricity is used during the school day air conditioning our buildings. Total utilities output for our district, $5.7 million. That's what we pay SRP and APS, City of Scottsdale Water, City of Phoenix Water, even City of Tempe Water, or Southwest Gas. So all inclusive, all water, gas, electricity. We have 4.1 million square feet in our district, and the cost per square foot for the year is $1.38. Divide that, trying to get, what that hourly rate should be. And when you work yourself down to the bottom, it's a pretty minuscule number. Again, all those square feet during the day, cooling the buildings, all of that, it adds up. But the numbers that we had represented in years past, I think were overinflated. So my proposal is that we incorporate the utility bills into the cost per square foot for rental, okay? So when I look at that, again, I'll mention that it takes money to maintain our buildings. A capital override does not maintain our buildings. It's the M&O dollars that maintain our buildings, fixing an air conditioning unit, fixing a hoop that doesn't go up and down in the gym, refinishing the floors in the gym, doing things like that. So I looked at it very carefully as to what it was that we should be charging. And so I've got for you our proposed fee, and did everyone get the very bloody agreement that we had just X'd out everything and it was awful? So one of the things was that the fee schedule was impossible to figure out. Any user going to our book and looking at, okay, utility rates are here, custodian fee is here, cost per square foot or the hourly rate is here. How do I figure this out? How do I know how that's going to work? So we've simplified it, and there are no utility costs. They're baked into the fees. So you don't have to look for, what if I have a field and it has lights, do I pay a lights fee and a field fee? It's just one fee. So we did what I think was a good job representing the community, trying to get those prices down. At the same time, knowing that we've got maintenance to take care of, we got salaries to take care of, there are costs associated with renting our facilities. So any user now will be able to just look at this and say, I want to rent the amphitheater, I'm a class 2, it's $15 an hour. The only caveat is a separate table for the staff. So if you have an event on a Saturday, you have to pay for staff. If you're bringing 500 people with you, you have to pay for security. And then there'll be a little charge for toilet paper and paper towels and all of that. But ideally, the simplified utilities baked into the hourly rates helps them tremendously. And I do have a note here that the facility user shall pay for direct expenses such as custodial, open, close, clean, when the event is held outside of regular business hours, 3 to 7 p.m. Why 3 to 7? I have staff at the school from 3 to 7. So we're already paying them. We're not going to charge somebody extra for that, Monday through Friday. But then if you're coming on a weekend, you're coming during a break, you're coming during the summer, then there's a different conversation that has to be had about staffing those events. So get to the meat of it and hopefully able to illustrate how our change in the fees will affect our users. There was a time that, well, last week, where student council would get charged for activities, utilities, things like that. And again, we're supporting our students. We're trying to do the right thing for them. Shannon probably will, choke me as I walk outside for saying all of this, but I think it's the right thing for us to do. So our current situation with a high school student council fundraiser, they would have been charged $268. With our proposed pricing, $92.75. So more than half reduction in that cost. It covers our cost to put staff there. It covers our cost to refill the toilet paper, paper towels, and soap. Okay? Number 2, club basketball in a gym. Now again, gyms, refinishing the floor, maintaining the bleachers, maintaining all of that. And yes, that's a cost that's shared by the school itself or our M&O dollars because of the school's usage. But our gym floors alone throughout the district is $125,000 a year to refinish our gym floors. Not cheap. So this group would have, as a Class 3 user in our old manual, turns into a Class 2 user, and their activity went from $25.99 to $12.37 if the current fee structure or the new fee structure is adopted. When I talked to Scott this afternoon, he was adamant about Class 1. I thought we were doing a good job with where we're at. They were formerly a Class 3 user, and a week's worth of practice would have cost them $1,125. And now with our proposal, it's $625. Again, my presentation has been shredded, so you guys do what you will with it. Scenario number 4, dance recital. Dance recitals pack the auditoriums 4 or 5 times a weekend, all charging for video, charging for a lot of different things. They are a for-profit organization, and so their event almost doesn't change. 1920 in the old structure, 1967 for the new structure. So, questions? Let's please limit it to 1 each.
Board Member Beckman.
On? Okay, there we go. This isn't surprising that we're here tonight. In 2019, Chaparral Lacrosse contacted me and we started discussions. We talked about the field usage and the fees and how it was cost prohibitive. And then we moved into COVID and things stalled and discussions stalled. So I want to thank the community for being here and bringing these discussions forth tonight. I know these are our students. I will not get to vote on this, unfortunately, because it will go to a vote after the new year and I'll no longer be on the board. But I do encourage our current board and our future board to meet with the community, the coaches, and make sure, because these are our students, that this remains not cost prohibitive, so that this lacrosse can remain an athletic program open to all of our students. So thank you for your presentation, and I agree with you.
Thank you, Board Member Beckman. Thank you, Board Member Beckman. Board Member Lindsay.
Well, I'm happy with this now that lacrosse has been moved to Class 1. My only question is, do we now need to update the manual so it specifically lays out that lacrosse is Class 1? And that'll
Yes.
be done before the next board meeting?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you, Board Member Lindsay. Board Member Greenberg.
On that note, will the administration look into the comments I had made about clarifying the manual in general, not just with lacrosse, because it needs to be so that when we all disappear eventually, fade into the ether, that whoever takes up the work of facilities to sign this has a relatively clear idea of what, because as you noted, we did have under the current definition groups that like fall pretty evenly into both, other than being not AIA recognized. So just want to make it as simple and straightforward as possible.
And if you look through those neighboring districts, they are not wordy at all. They are very specific, this group, this group, this group, that's it.
Right.
So I think we will employ this classification determination matrix moving forward, so we can sit down with those users and say, okay, you're this, 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 and this. You see what we see? Yep, there you go, we're good to go.
My only question would be, with the change, would that put us in line with most, not just lacrosse, but moving these groups into Class 1, would that put us in line with what other districts are doing? Or do most districts, I mean, looking at this, Cave Creek, put non-AIA sports into Class 2? So that's the more, do we know that?
I read all of them quickly today. I don't recall them even mentioning non-AIA organizations. So they might have, but there's one sport that's non-AIA that is at our table today.
Right. Okay.
So Josh, where's Josh? He made a suggestion this afternoon that if you are an organization that disagrees with the classification, then maybe you do a presentation to the governing board and share with them why you feel that that's something that's necessary to make that change in classification. Not a bad idea, but I think the
So
superintendent.
now it's our fault.
And the CFO. Well, isn't everything your fault? Because I get blamed for everything. No, absolutely. I think that the suggestion that you made was part of the slashing that got done. And we will, and that's why we changed the presentation today, because not just because of your comments, but that we obviously need to look at it with a different lens.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I do understand the cost expense issue here, and I think it's important to note that beyond lacrosse, but for all the teams and users who are currently not paying or pay a reduced fee, that, you know, I think that's lost on many people, that actually, even when you are being charged a fee, that probably doesn't cover the full expense of what we're looking at in terms of what we have to pay to maintain the facilities, provide security, make sure people are safe. So I appreciate that. I thought that came out very clearly in this presentation, and I appreciate all the hard work you've been doing, working and communicating with community members, sharing what they've said, as well as providing this additional research and information so that we can be better informed. So thank you.
Okay.
And I concur with those comments made by both of my board colleagues here. I really want us to focus on good communication of any changes that are implemented to our practices in this district, to our community. These people are here, as we all can see tonight, because they care about their students. And this is a very positive activity that we should be supporting for our kids beyond the classroom. So again, the change of communication needs to be before changes take place. I think that's a responsibility of ours. I also would like for us to focus on consistency of practices across our entire district, not lacrosse, but across. Come on. And just thinking, I mean, we have two obvious schools identified here this evening, but if other schools are interested in supporting clubs, club sports, I see it's a win-win for us as a district, but so that they're also included in this Class 1 assignment as well. I do want to note that this does not release any organization from following the law, and that is proof of liability insurance while using our facility, correct?
Correct.
Bueno, good. Okay, that's it for me.
So only one comment on that.
Okay.
Club sports, that's a word used universally for kids that play at a competitive level.
Right.
Sereno soccer is a club sport. Phoenix Rising is a club sport. And I think we cannot blur the line because it'll be a avalanche of you don't have that sport at your school, represented at your school. That's the discussion here.
Yep.
We already have a soccer team. We already have a football team. We already have a tennis team. So we don't want everyone coming saying, hey, I'm a club sport. And
Right.
Julie said.
No, Julie did not say. Make that clear right now.
So I just want to be clear on that.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. I see some more requests for comments. First of all, Board Member Dr. Hart-Wells, do you have a comment to make?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Dennis, I wanted to thank you for all the hard work that went into revising the fee schedule and reconsidering the definitions, and also your responsiveness to the many comments that have come in the last week, including mine. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we're going to go another round. Board Member Lindsay.
I was just going to chime in on Board Member Greenberg's question earlier that over the last week or so, I've talked to a handful of ADs around the valley, and they all believe that lacrosse should not be charged. They should be Tier 1 because it's not their fault. The AIA does not recognize them and the benefit they provide to the students. So I didn't have one AD tell me they think that they should be charged.
Board Member Greenberg.
Now we're building a jigsaw, just to build on Mr. Rayler's point that what my comments were that Class 1 basically covered officially recognized groups, so that would help, depending on, that's not the wording that has to be chosen, but that would differ the officially recognized Arcadia High School lacrosse, as an example, from just a club team that,
Sure.
So and that might give the flexibility we need for whoever takes up this work in the future to designate appropriate classes. Thank you.
Perfect, at least until AIA adopts them as an officially sanctioned sport. Just saying. And I think that would conclude questions from board members, comments. Thank you, Dennis, and whoever
You're welcome.
else was behind working this magic. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And at this point in the meeting, we are going to move on to public comment. But I'd like to say that our public is required before the meeting begins to sign up to request to speak. And if you have signed up and you choose to not, when your name is called, you can just say that you passed and we'll move to the next person on the list. I have 8 people requesting to speak. I will tell you who's up, and then I will follow with who's on deck. And then when you approach the podium, please state your first and last name, and then you can begin in your 2 minutes. You'll be given 2 minutes to address the board. Your 2 minutes will begin once you start. And if you go over, you'll hear a little chime, and then we'll hear your mic get muted. So to start with, Gary Shapiro is up first. And on deck is Scott Schmidt.
Good evening. My name is Gary Shapiro, and I normally don't attend these meetings, but this is a historic day, and I wanted to come out and be with you, and I'm so proud to be here. For the past 51 years, My passion has been to promote the Scottsdale Unified School District. I was the co-founder of your foundation, a co-founder of Scottsdale Leadership. I've chaired bonds and overrides. I've served on Blue Ribbon and Visioning committees, the Charo Foundation, and the Charo Education Committee. I've seen it all. I've watched countless administrations, school board members, teachers, and staff. I came out tonight to share 4 things with you, and I'm glad that we have people in the audience. First of all, Patty Beckman, thank you. Thank you for your awesome service to our kids and our community. If we were an athletic organization, we would retire your jersey. We'd hang it up in the gym, and we would revere and respect it forever. Number 2, thank you, Superintendent Menzel, for your leadership and dedication. We are lucky to have you. Michigan's loss, our gain. At your tender age of 54, you have lots of runway. I hope we don't screw it up. Our future is very bright with you, and I'm grateful for your leadership. Number 3, we will have some new board members joining us, and I'm grateful for their willingness to serve. They are the new stewards and fiduciaries of a proud school district that is 126 years old, a school district that is the envy of people across the state. Thank you very much.
Scott Schmidt.
Scott Schmidt is up, followed by Sonia Kim. Sonia Kim is after Scott.
Thank you so much for having us. And I feel like Dennis kind of stole some of my thunder because he agrees with everything we've said. And I thank you all for listening to our plight. I feel like we should have been here years ago to tell you more about lacrosse. So I'm going to do it today. You've already read it. We've been in this district for over 20 years. Our teams, and we've had 4 of the 5 high schools have had teams. We've won 13 state championships. Over 50 kids have moved on to play collegiate lacrosse. We were the hotbed of lacrosse for years, and it's starting to shift to some of the private schools, but we're still fighting, and this is part of it, to make it more accessible. I want to just point out, and I'm going to skip all my notes, we're being compared in the manual right now to National Youth Football and I-9 Sports and the Boy Scouts of America. These kids back here, they're not like the Boy Scouts or I-9 Sports. They bleed their school colors. In fact, they almost make each other bleed when we play each other. But tonight they're behaving and getting along for this great cause. We appreciate your advocacy and considering treating us as a Class 1 renter. We appreciate you embracing us as a sport, even though AIA has not done that yet. And it's time for us to have a partnership so we can not only grow this sport, get it back in our other high schools, but perhaps lead the way with AIA, where SUSD is the district that actually pushes this through, so we're a recognized sport in the state. We've got a few other people that are going to talk tonight to tell you about their personal experiences. We really appreciate you listening. We appreciate your vote. I'm counting on you, and hope to hear about the good news at the next meeting. Thank you so much.
Sonia Kim is up, followed by Jojo Sati.
Sonia Kim. Good evening, board members and Dr. Menzel. My name is Sonia Kim, and I'm a guidance counselor at Arcadia High School. This is my 26th year working in SUSD as both a teacher and a counselor. I am the mom of 2 Arcadia graduates and a current freshman. My son is an Arcadia lacrosse alum, and I've been the lacrosse sponsor for the last 5 years. The lacrosse team is a huge part of Arcadia's school community, and I cannot emphasize enough the inclusiveness of the program. Part of my job is to help students become involved on campus, to find an interest, to feel connected. Research says that the more students is involved in extracurricular activities, the more success they will have in school. Lacrosse is a no-cut sport. My son, who joined the sport with no experience, was immediately welcomed into the program and made to feel like he belonged. The positive impact the Arcadia team has for so many students like my son is unmeasurable. As a counselor, I've had students transfer from Veritas, students who chose Arcadia over Brophy, or students who have open enrolled just to be part of our team. The student body treats lacrosse like other AIA teams on campus. Lacrosse is introduced at assemblies with other sports. The team has its own page in the sports section of the yearbook, and the cheerleaders cheer at our games. On game days, the players proudly wear their Arcadia jerseys to school and on the playing field. Just like other AIA sports, I complete grade checks for our players. Grade checks begin in October before the season even begins and continue through April. I can attest to the fact that making grades to play in a game is just as motivating for lacrosse players as it is for other athletes. The Arcadia coaches, booster club members, and families have been consistent and long-term members of the program. Charging us for the use of the facilities makes it increasingly difficult for our families to single-handedly fund the sport. I fear that many students who might not have any other place to call home won't be able to participate. This can't be what is in the best interest of our students. Please give our teams equal opportunity to learn the value of teamwork, responsibility, culture, community, and most importantly, personal success.
Jojo Sati, followed by Kaden Broats.
All right, hello, I'm JoJo. As you guys all may know, lacrosse is a very expensive sport to play. I don't know about everyone else, but I'm one of the students that is on scholarship to play lacrosse here at Arcadia. And recently I found out that the district wants to start charging us to use the field. And if this charge is approved, then players all around the district, including myself, will be priced out of the sport. It is unfair that we go out there and represent Arcadia and we aren't treated like all the other sports at Arcadia. This is my third year playing lacrosse, and if this goes through, then I won't be able to play my senior year. No memories with my teammates, no benefits, and I can't really do anything about this, but you guys can. Thank you.
Kaden Broats, followed by Mariah Smith.
Hi guys, my name is Caden Brotz. I am a former Chaparral graduate and captain of the Chaparral lacrosse team, and I am now a coach. So I wanted to speak about lacrosse in Arizona and how important it was for me when I grew up. Chaparral really let me expand to lacrosse, and I really wanted to go to that program because it was so respectful and such a big thing for young lacrosse players growing up. It has a reputation like no other school, and that is so important to me. So speaking to you guys and knowing that you guys made this decision is huge. I also want to say that lacrosse is a sport that promotes a lot of opportunity for kids that may not have it. And the reason why this is because a lot of Division I, Division II, and Division III schools in college, they are very, very highly recognized academic schools. And it gives kids the opportunity that might not have that same opportunity in other sports to get a very good education and get scholarship for it. So I think including lacrosse into an actual, as a school sport is very important, and I really am grateful for what you guys did. So thank you.
Thank you. Mariah Smith, followed by Becky Williams.
Mariah Smith. Hi, my name is Mariah Smith, and my daughter Kyla is a sophomore at Chaparral High School. Kyla's been playing lacrosse for 8 years, and it's her favorite thing to do, and has been a positive influence in her life and development. Having the ability to play the sport she loves at her high school has been a great experience. As a freshman, it was great for Kyla to feel the sport was respected by her school and also celebrated. Games were announced at school, and her classmates would come to the Chap Field to cheer her team on. She is looking forward to continuing this experience as she develops in school and on the field. The sports offering for girls to play in high school is limited, and nothing is offered is similar to girls lacrosse. A few things that you may not know about girls lacrosse. For one thing, the girls' game is unique in character to the boys' game. The only similarities between the two sports is the rubber ball and the goal that they use. Everything else is unique to the girls' game, which makes it more appealing for both athletes and fans, and is a great sport for our girls to thrive within. The girls wear no pads except for the goalie, and the fluidity of the game is unique. Fast paces and quick movements are needed, as well as superior eye-hand coordination. It is a sport where multiple body types and abilities are able to thrive. There is no sport that is currently offered at Scottsdale schools that offers this. Lacrosse is also a great avenue for our girls to access college athletics across the nation. At the collegiate level, the number of women in lacrosse continues to grow, and with that, increased opportunities. Our graduated girls last year are going to D1, 2, and 3 programs, and this year we have Division I committed athletes playing for our program. It is inspiring for our girls to be appreciated for their athletic abilities. With all these positives, I was surprised that the district was looking to penalize our athletes. The district should be looking at more ways to lift up programs like girls lacrosse and not put barriers to thwart their growth. In a male-dominated athletic landscape, it is disheartening when we learn that off-season boys' athletic programs take precedence over thriving girls' athletic programs. It is also a shame that the district would rather promote sports where there are no collegiate paths over a sport like girls lacrosse, where the opportunities continue to grow. I thank you for your willingness to hear my comments, and I hope you consider being a positive force for girls lacrosse in Scottsdale.
Becky Williams, followed by Grace Gombras.
Good evening, Dr. Menzel, President Sanowski, Vice President Hart-Wells, members of the Governing Board, Ms. Wagner, and guests. I'm Becky Williams. I'm a parent and staff member in the Saguaro Learning Community, as well as the president of the Scottsdale Education Association. And I really just wanted to take a moment to express my sincerest thank you to our outgoing board member Greenberg and board member Beckman. You both ran for the board at a time that was very unsettling and unstable for our district, our community, and you stood up as community activists against the disruption that was occurring as advocates for our students, and you brought that advocacy with you, and it's followed you through your tenure on the board. And one of the things that I will forever be grateful for, due to in large part to your persistence and patience, our employee groups have a voice at the table, a seat at the table, and we know that when those of us that are most directly in contact with students on a daily basis at the building level, in our front offices, in our classrooms, on our buses, in our cafeterias, we have the most direct impact on our students, and when we are able to collaborate in the decisions that most affect their day-to-day school lives, then the result is greater outcomes for our students. So for that, I am forever grateful, and I just wanted to say thank you. I look very forward to seeing where your public service path is going to take you next. So.
Our last speaker this evening is Grace Gombras.
Good evening. My name is Grace Dombries. I'm here with Veronica Leeper, and we are here to recognize board members Patty Beckman and Jan Michael Greenberg, and to thank you for your leadership, time, and dedication to the service of our children in the Scottsdale Unified School District. A quote from Margaret Mead reminds me of where we were in SUSD 4 years ago. She wrote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." 4 years ago, SUSD was a community that was being broken apart by false narratives, self-interests, and a school board that could not hear the voices of parents, teachers, and students. Both of you worked diligently to bring back community voice and to redirect our district's work back to our most important goal, to help all students achieve. Before joining the school board and throughout your time in office with challenges to schools that have never been experienced and impossible to foresee, you served our children in schools with intelligence and courage, with best intentions, with heart and grace, with true appreciation for public education and for all students. You will be missed on the governing board, but you will always be remembered for how you changed our world. Thank you for your service.
And that concludes the public comment section of our meeting this evening. We will move on to superintendent comments.
So you all are welcome to stay as long as you'd like tonight, but you're also welcome to leave because you may have other things to do. So thank you for being here this evening. We do appreciate that. I do have confidence. Okay, so I just have a couple of items to go through before we move on with our agenda. It was great to see so many people here to support the lacrosse programs, both from Arcadia and Chaparral. And it reminds me that last night we celebrated the Fall Sports Banquet, and I want to just give a shout out to our scholar athletes and to our coaches, to Nathan and Barb for pulling it together. We had a fantastic fall season with one more big game coming up. But it's a reminder, when you look at our strategic plan goal 2.4, the importance of extracurricular activities and creating these kinds of opportunities for our students. You heard passionate advocacy for one sport, but across the board, our scholar athletes have important opportunities here in Scottsdale, and we're just grateful to be able to celebrate them. Secondly, we've had a couple of orientation sessions for our incoming governing board members, and we've got a couple more meetings this coming week, so we're working hard on that transition. There's, as you all know from having been new board members yourself, there's a whole lot of information in a short amount of time, but I appreciate the willingness of Amy and Karen to jump right in terms of that transition. And finally, given this is the last regular meeting of the calendar year 2022, I just want to wish all of our staff and our families and the governing board a healthy, safe, and happy holiday break.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel. And we're going to now go to continue the rest of our information and discussion items. Our first presentation will be ESSER program update. Dr. Menzel?
We have Shannon Crozier and Alice Bengola to provide both a financial and a programmatic update this evening.
Thanks. Board President Sanowski, Vice President Dr. Hartwells, members of the board, and the few that are still here with us tonight. We are looking again at ESSER and providing another update as we do quarterly on how we're doing with the ESSER 1, 2, and 3. Just a brief, ESSER 1 originally came about as a relief for schools for COVID. At that time, it was a small amount, about $2 million, and was based off of Title I funds and our Title I share of students. So that one actually ended September 30th of 22. We're completing that right now. Even though the items had to be received by September 30th, we're still paying bills and completing that. We have until December 31st or next Friday, actually, to wrap that one up.
Then came along ESSER 2 as an additional amount to help out with the COVID and additional costs that are coming up because of COVID and making sure that students continue their learning. That was also based on the Title 1A funds. And that one was a significantly more. That was $8.4 million. It goes until September 30th of next year, so we have not quite a year left on ESSER 2. And then we received ESSER 3, or the American Rescue Plan, and again, that was based off of the number of students or families we had within Title I. And that one was significantly higher, but it also had significantly more restrictions and how we could spend those monies. But that came in at just over $19 million. And we have until September of 24, so a little over a year and a half to spend those funds. So when we look at ESSER 1, and this was done as of October 31st. So we have, at this point, we have spent most of those funds. I looked today, we're down to about $3,000 that we need to still pay out of ESSER 1. There's a possibility that we will end up taking an expense that was done this year out of ESSER 3 and just moving that over to ESSER 1 so that we can complete that out. But it'll be within learning intervention materials. So that one has ended. And like I said, we just have a little bit left. It was one of those, we took it right to the wire. And so just making sure that we have all of those invoices in, paid for, accounted for, and then seeing where we're at. And that will wrap up ESSER 1. ESSER 2, we've done, and I apologize, that is really small. We have done a little bit more with that. We addressed more so the learning loss. When ESSER 2 came around and then ESSER 3, we went, we need some additional help here to be able to deal. This is a lot of money. There's a lot of responsibilities around it. So we added positions for COVID support, Alice and her teams to look at what we're doing, make sure we're spending that financially correct. We brought in a COVID specialist to help out with that. Additionally, we knew we had more things that we needed to do. We needed to have more facility cleaning. We needed to buy some stuff to be able to keep our facilities cleaner. And then really talking about addressing learning loss. So this just looks at where we're at right now. As of October 31st, we've spent most of that money. We also did COVID retention stipends out of ESSER 2. So we've spent the bulk of that. We still have about 1.1 million remaining in there. When we look at the anticipated encumbered, those are things that we have a PO for right now, or a position that we have right now. We know that money is in place, going to be used this year. When we look at the amount remaining, it's not that we don't have a plan for that $900,000, we just don't have a PO in place. So when we submit the grant, when Alice works on that grant and submits it to the state, we have to tell them what is our plan to spend that money. So because it says $900,000 is still remaining, I don't want it to seem like that's just money that's sitting there that we have no plan for. We do have a plan for it, we just don't have it encumbered. We don't have it directly for a position out of ESSER 2. Alice and I have talked, I think a portion of summer school will end up coming out of that ESSER 2 to complete it. What Alice and I have also discussed this year is that not waiting till the end to finish this grant out. I'd like to have it done by June 30th and wrapped up so we're not at the last minute saying, did we get all the invoices in? Is everything paid? So we are working on completing that out. And the goal is to have that wrapped up by June 30th and the money spent on that by June 30th when we close out the year. And then the last one being ESSER 3. And that one really did have a lot more stipulations to it. It came out that you needed to address learning loss. You needed to address social emotional needs. You needed to do more reporting, and it had to be evidence-based on how you spent the funds. And so a lot more detailed within that one. But that's a breakdown of how we've been using it. We've used it for retention stipends. We've used it for summer stipends. The summer stipends were we had a grant this summer that would allow us to pay a stipend if you worked so many weeks. But not everybody fell into that specific, it was the AZ on Tracks grant. So not everybody fell into that, but it wasn't fair to say that because you work this program, you get a bonus, but you work the different summer school program, so you don't. So we used ESSER funds to be able to give that additional money to our staff for doing that. Additionally, it helped to be able to get our staff to apply for some of those summer jobs more so. COVID support, we've done additional support for our nurse's office last year. We had additional support in the school office, helping out with the forms that were coming through, tracing that needed to happen, as well as our COVID support positions within the district office for tracking this grant and the financial support through it. We do still have that anticipated encumbrance for the 24 year. Even though the grant will end shortly thereafter, we know that, or we anticipate still paying out some of those positions next year. So that's why I've got it anticipated for the following year. We've put money into facilities, buying drinking fountains, tables. What we're doing right now is paying for custodial cleaning out of ESSER 3, as well as additional custodial cleaning during the cafeteria time. They just don't have the staff and manpower to go make sure those tables are wiped consistently throughout the lunch period, so we're using ESSER dollars to help pay for that. Again, there's other things on here, Scottsdale Online Learning, summer programs, technology. So again, we've spent a large portion of that. Again, when you see 4.6 remaining, like I said, we have a plan for that. We just haven't encumbered it, but it's also a plan that can change. And we've changed this a couple times, and we'll probably change it a couple more times before we're done, as we realize, okay, this is a need that takes more priority over what we originally thought we would need to do. Or something didn't cost as much as we thought it was gonna be, we're gonna move some things around. So at this point, we still anticipate about 4.6 million there, and really focusing on the learning loss for our students. And I'm going to let Ms. Bengola talk about how they're doing that. Dancing cane. Exactly.
Okay, so tonight I'm going to address how we use ESSER funds to support student learning. And we've been quite busy this year with continuing our in-district tutoring. This is tutoring that is done by our SUSD teachers and certified staff. So when we look at the high school and middle school, those teachers are primarily tutoring in the areas of math and world language. When I look at the time and effort forms, that seems to be the predominant subjects in there. So attendance is taken each time that the student comes in, and then this will allow us then, once semester grades are posted, we will then determine the impact that tutoring has had on the student achievement. There are approximately 200 students in middle and high school that are taking advantage of the tutoring, the in-district tutoring. For elementary school, our subjects are primarily reading and mathematics for our younger grades. Tutoring is taking place primarily at the beginning and the end of the day, so before and after school. We do have 3 schools that we're able to hire part-time interventionists, and they work during the day as part of an intervention. We are using FastBridge and iReady data to determine the impact tutoring has on these students. So again, our winter benchmarks, the teachers are in the process this week and next week delivering those benchmarks, and we will have the data. We have some preliminary data, but nothing that, as far as the time that we really want it to be, that 8 weeks of learning that takes place to see the impact that it's had. This just gives you an idea of a typical report that we might see in the elementary schools. So this type of report shows you the progress that is being made by a student. The nice thing about this report is that we don't necessarily have to wait until January to make a change. If it's not working after 6 to 8 weeks, and each dot represents a week, then we can change up what we're using for the tutoring program to see if that may impact the child. So at the top left of the screen, or top right, I should have directionally challenged here. At the top right of the screen, you'll see a report that's labeled Early Reading Nonsense Word Progress Monitoring. We are not teaching children nonsense words during intervention, but nonsense words, this assessment is a particular tool used when a student is receiving phonics instruction or intervention. So this tool would be the ability to apply a student's knowledge of letter sounds in order to decode without giving them a clue as to the meaning of the word or that it's something they recognize through sight, so that we really want to make sure that we are truly testing a student's phonics progress. The other chart that you see is the progress monitoring of the student's overall achievement. It's called CBM reading. This is a 1-minute passage that students read out loud. It's a grade level passage, and we keep track of how many minutes, how many words per minute a student reads, and then the number of errors a student makes. So this will help us see if that student isn't aligned with grade level norms as far as reading rate. And then we can also see if they have an accuracy problem and what that might be, so that we can address that issue at that time. As you may recall, reading and math specialists were hired as part of our 20% set-aside funds to address learning loss. These specialists are providing small group interventions 3 to 5 times a week. Specialists use the diagnostic information from FastBridge and other reading diagnostics to pinpoint what skills students need to have targeted during instruction. For instance, some of our primary students may need targeted instruction in the area of letter sounds or decoding for reading. Or in math, they may need instruction in number sense or quantity discrimination. Our intermediate students may need targeted instruction in fluency or in comprehension. And in math, they may be working on place value or numbers and operations. Data meetings are being conducted in each of these buildings approximately every 6 weeks. During these meetings, the teams can review student data, both in the classroom and during the intervention. We currently have 4 full-time reading specialists and 4 part-time reading specialists funded through ESSER. These specialists are at the elementary building, except one of our .5 specialists is at a K-8 building. Altogether, there are approximately 225 students receiving reading intervention. Currently, we have 3 full-time math specialists, and we are again posting for the 3rd time positions in 2 of our middle schools where we need math specialists. So currently there are 88 students receiving some type of math intervention. You may also recall that part of ESSER was used to fund 2 behavior specialists that were added to our student supports department. And these individuals are providing various levels of support at all of our campuses. They're working with veteran teachers and they're working with new teachers. The foundation of their support is to work with all staff in the classroom, providing positive classroom behavior strategies. And you can see that some of these strategies on the slide. As you can see, the behavior team was able to provide professional development at all 30 campuses, that 30th campus being SOL, sorry, I've almost slipped there in the SOL, but SOL, and they are really doing more of a consultation basis with SOL. Our behavior specialists have attended meetings throughout the school, coaching in not only for Tier 1, as we saw with the classroom practices, but Tier 2, and really giving suggestions and working out plans for students that are experiencing some behavior concerns. They have attended 58 meetings in the K-5 buildings. They've attended 13 meetings in the 6 through 8 and 16 meetings at the high school. Those are just general data meetings. They've been there much more than that, but these are the specific data meetings where all that planning takes place and that expertise can be shared. These are some additional services. Some are familiar to you that you've seen, and we're carrying them forward this year. JFCS continues to be funded. through ESSER, as well as through some other grants. Not My Kid is also another organization, and their approach is slightly different than JFCS, and that's been used in a couple of our middle schools. The sensory carts you saw last year with Hohokam had the nests that they built for each of their buildings, and some of the other schools, while they may not have rooms for the sensory rooms, they have sensory carts, and they've also used Kim McDonald, our occupational therapist, to help with student or staff development in that. Social worker training is continuing for restorative practices as well. Finally, some additional ways that we're using the support. We continue to use iReady. We are going to be looking at the number of minutes and its usage. I have seen, since I looked at it in October, usage was up in most buildings, and as far as what we've talked to principals, they really are happy about that. So M-Class is another reading intervention that we just purchased in summer school. We piloted that a little bit, and now all of our reading specialists are using M-Class for their Tier 3, which is their most significant students in need of reading intervention. It's a very direct instruction, research-based program that is progress monitored weekly as well. Tonto Creek still is sparking the interest of some of our schools, so we're trying to get that in every school at least once. Some schools have asked for a repeat performance, but we want to make sure that we have been able to share it with all those principals that want it in their building. And professional development continues to be part of our set-aside funds, where we're allowing principals to have those funds, whether it's to hire substitutes or pay staff, to engage in those data meetings that are critical as we begin our MTSS work. We've also been able to pay for approximately 60 to 75 teachers to attend that dyslexia training in the reading foundations. So that is, I'm pretty sure it's a 3 or 4 day training, and we pay for the substitutes as well as for the trainer for that. And this will help enable some of our teachers to get that literacy endorsement that will be required in 2025. So looking ahead, we're still looking at varsity tutors. I was actually on the phone with them today and yesterday and Thursday, but they are very interested in expanding the way that we use varsity tutors. Currently, we have 59 sessions of varsity tutors occurring since the last week of August, and we have 23 students. But we're not stopping there. We're also using it for some of our special education students to help meet the number of minutes that they may need for their IEPs if we are short-staffed in that area of special education. We're also looking at how can we use varsity tutors within the school day at our middle and high schools to help with teachers that may need that additional support in math instruction, as well as our students that need that additional support. So we're looking at some ingenious ways of creating small groups within the class day, within that classroom, to get expert certified math instruction and reinforcement through varsity tutors, as well as through the teacher that's in the classroom. So we will continue to share data analysis that we do with varsity tutors, with in-district tutoring, with iReady, with reading and math specialists, and looking at that with the school leaders and saying, what is working in your building? What do you think is having the greatest impact? Because we have several things going right now, and we want to see from them, what do they believe is the single most important factor. And in some cases, it's going to be a combination that different students need different things that we're able to give them. So we'll be reviewing the winter benchmark right when school resumes in January to really see that student growth. You saw those charts that I had earlier. I've been looking at those monthly and then recording some things for just those students who are seeing a reading and math interventionist that are funded through ESSER so that I can keep tabs on that, so that as we learn more about what ESSER is requiring us to provide to them to determine impact, I already will have that material for them. Because we will be randomly selected at one point in time, and that will be the time that I'm randomly selected and I win that jackpot. If it was for the lottery, it would not be there. So the other thing that we're going to be doing in January, we're going to continue, because we've met once already, on the summer programming. What do we actually want our summer program to look like? What's giving us the best results? And where we can run summer school where we're not competing with each other for students and for staff, but we're having a cohesive program. And with that, we'll take some questions.
Board Member Beckman.
Okay, I'll try and keep it short, but I have a few. So with regard to your summer programming, ESSER, is limited. You said that the encumbered amount was PO in hand. So when you find programs that are working, what are we going to inform our decisions in the future for support for our kids? I mean, you're talking about varsity tutors and bringing them in on a larger scale. So talk to me about how we plan on funding that in the future if it's something that's working.
Well, Shannon will probably be able to give you the source. I would be able to tell you that our hope is to accelerate students so we have less and less of a need for something like varsity tutors. But funding-wise?
Thank you, President Beckman. That is something we're going to have to look at. There are things that we are funding through ESSER, and they provide a lot of additional funds for us that we will not have in the future. And so one of the things we will have to look at is what are the must-have, and then start to look at, are there other grants that can pick that up, that could take over funding those? Or do we need to make a decision on we are not going to have something else, but this is more important? And so those are things we're going to have to look at, is what is the best bang for our buck with what we've been using ESSER funds for. Hopefully the need for addressing some of the learning loss, hopefully we've picked that up. That was the point of the ESSER funds, was to get students back to where they need to be. But I do think that once those funds start to diminish or go away, there are going to be some decisions as to what do we have to keep, what do we need to keep, and then where can we fit that into another grant somewhere, or is that something we need to look at? Maybe a different program isn't working so well, we stop doing that and we do something different.
Okay, and I appreciate it, because I think we have an opportunity with these pools of money to inform future budget priorities. So you looking at those opportunities, I think is great. The other concern I had, it's not really a concern, but maybe you can answer it, is summer school. I think it's fantastic for the last couple of years that our kids, our students have had the opportunity to have free summer school. Are we doing that again? I saw you had it up there, but I didn't hear a commitment.
I believe that is the plan.
It is the plan.
It is the plan.
For this summer of 2023, there will be the summer school will run as it did last year. What we offer and how we offer, where we offer, because of Dennis wanting to get in the buildings and do the facilities cleaning and things like that, those little decisions have to be made. But as far as will we actually have the program, yes.
Okay, last question or comment, because I have to get them all in here, is 200 kids in our middle and high school level taking advantage of our tutoring, to me, is not enough. We need to really work on communication and support so that we capture those kids that need help and we get them in our doors with our teachers. Because when you presented some of the data to us early in the year, we all agreed that we've got to, kind of step it up and be a little more proactive, and I would like, now's the time. So,
and part of my, and pardon me for interrupting, part of my discussion with varsity tutors was how can we get students familiar with that, and it may be during the school day, so they can get familiar with using it, interacting with a tutor, so that when they go home, they don't have to worry about, oh, I don't know if I can log on, I don't know who I'll get, I don't know how it's going to be. They'll already have a little more confidence in there. So that's part of our reason for wanting to seek those opportunities in the middle and high school to use it during the day.
And I appreciate that. Last thing is I would encourage you to communicate with the middle and high school families more with regard to this. We really have an opportunity in this district. We kind of fall off the radar at the K-5 level level from really talking to those parents about where the need is academically for their kids and suggesting different supports. So I appreciate all you're doing and keep it up, and thank you. Okay.
Thank you. And Dr. Benson, did you want to add comment?
Test, did we get that? So, thank you, I appreciate that, Board President Sanowski. So we don't have another Julie said moment and an Alice said moment. To clarify where we have the free summer school, that would be for our SUSD students. So the entire valley doesn't get to come to SUSD for free for summer school. So we have, we're happy to open enroll kiddos and for a lesser rate, but it's not free to the valley for all summer school programming for our ESSER.
Thank you for clarifying that, Dr. Benson. Any other questions from board members? Vice President Dr. Hart-Wells, do you have any questions or comments on this topic?
I do, thank you. I pulled the thread on the tutoring. Alice, you mentioned Varsity Tutors has had 56 sessions. Is that for the school year so far?
That's since September 1st.
Total across the district?
That's correct.
Well, that's really low. Do you think that's low? Am I wrong?
No, I think it is low, and that's why we have been communicating with Varsity Tutors, as I mentioned, about what are some ways that we can get students more comfortable with it and more likely to take advantage of the situation that we're providing for them. So I do believe that being able to run through it within the classroom under the guidance of a teacher there to help support them and encourage them, I think that once they see what that has to offer, I think that will be the biggest hurdle that's stopping some students from getting in there.
Okay, I appreciate that. As a parent, I wonder, is there an opportunity, or have you already considered identifying students that are strongly recommended for tutoring and communication with parents, is to the point that the middle school, high school grades don't have quite as much interaction with parents, and by design, I get it, but if there would be an opportunity to expose the families more to the Varsity Tutors as I think the summer school, there are invitations sent out to certain students that you would like to participate in the summer program. Is that something similar that's going on for Varsity Tutors, or are they in-district tutoring?
We can definitely run that by the middle school and high school principals. I know in the past what they've done is, especially around conference time, if not before, say mid-quarter, they have contacted, or the teacher has contacted the parents in regards to the possibility of using Varsity Tutors if they can't take advantage of the in-district SUSD tutoring. But we'll run that by the middle school and high school principals to get their input on ways that we can attract more students.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all your work, Alice.
Sure.
Board Member Beckman.
Just a quick comment. I don't know if people are aware, parents are aware, but Varsity Tutors offers instant tutoring online. And I think that a lot of times the thought is prohibitive. They think of tutoring as like some long-term commitment and, you know, signing up, et cetera. But I think we need to kind of put that communication out a lot more. We often find ourselves at the end of the evening needing some support at home, and they're pretty good at it, so.
Yes.
Thank you, Board Member Beckman. And to make note that we do, as you stated, Alice, we do offer tutoring to our students, as well as teachers typically do before and after school, and even lunchtime work with their students without any fee. So we offer all sorts of layers of support. We just need to make sure that the students that need the support are showing up and getting it.
Right.
And at some point, maybe it's some type of a requirement that it's part of their coursework. I don't know. That's for the experts, all you guys out there, to determine that, because we can offer it, but we can't. It's not going to make a difference if the students aren't utilizing that service.
Right. In one of our last middle school and high school meetings, We actually did talk to the principals about other ways that we could possibly use varsity tutors. What about the tutoring in district that's being offered? And many of the principals felt that their students were getting what they needed from their teachers, and it may not be the formalized in-district tutoring, because there were some stipulations placed on that through ESSER as far as the consistency of it and what they needed to do in order for funding by ESSER. But they did say there are a lot of instances where the teachers are going that, as you know, that extra mile or 10 miles that's needed to help those students.
And Shannon and Alice, both of you, I want to thank you for not just your presentation, but staying on top of what I believe is really important, and that is how are we knowing that our ESSER funds are making a difference in student achievement and personal success for our students. That's ultimately why those funds were developed and created. And you answered all of my questions that I had about that. So I appreciate keeping that as the target moving forward.
Absolutely.
I had another question.
Yes, go ahead.
To finish. Thank you. So in the, I don't know, we could put the slide up, and if not, it's not a big deal, but for the remaining funds, so ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, there's a percent of budget column. And right now, obviously those are ebbing and flowing as the expenditures are spun down. Is there a goal to have learning loss be a certain percent? I realize the grant in ESSER 3 stipulates a de minimis number, but do we have a goal to perhaps exceed that percent on learning loss?
Yes, Dr. Hartwells. When we put this together, we didn't say we wanted a certain amount, but we knew that that was the area that was going to need the most attention and focus, as well as the fact that the grant stipulates that we spend a certain percentage for learning loss. So we haven't specifically said we want a certain percentage to be towards learning loss, but I think as you can see, we've tried to put the bulk of the money to that area, knowing that there's lots of areas that needed to be addressed within COVID, because COVID impacts so many different areas of a student's life, be it academic or social or behavioral issues, as well as there's facility needs that we needed to address. So we did want to make sure that we were putting as much as possible towards learning loss into our students, and we definitely have exceeded what the grant was requiring. But there wasn't a set percentage that we said this is where we're gonna, the goal that we're gonna put it at.
Dr. Menzel?
I just want to add to that at the end of this cycle, we'll be able to step back and review where we are, look at our student data, and make some decisions in terms of reallocating resources so that given where ESSER 3 is and the amount of money that's there, we can put it where the need is the greatest. So we do have the opportunity to do an appraisal as we get through the end of this second year. We won't have to spend all of ESSER 2, but we'll spend the majority of it. We get through the summer program, we look at the data, then we can reallocate funds within ESSER 3.
Thank you. Any
Okay,
other?
and thank you. I appreciate that you know, use the data to inform decision-making in a rolling pattern. I just would ask that maybe we consider setting a benchmark for ourselves on the learning loss in terms of percent of budget to manage towards, if that makes sense based on the analysis and the data.
And I will say, Vice President Hartwells, that every proposition that comes up and every idea that comes up, whether it be from community members, from staff, what have you, is always looked at is how directly does this impact and does this reflect what's going on in the classroom. So the further the funds are away from the classroom and what the students are doing inside the classroom, the less impact it's going to have on those achievement scores. So we are really looking at how is this helping and innovating our learning. To give you an idea, Donna Dempsey, our math coach, we just purchased Building B looked like a warehouse for a while, but we purchased math manipulatives so that every grade level and every school could have kits. She's been putting together carts for our easels, and every school is getting 8 easels so that students can practice their math facts in a different way than they normally were able to. So we are really having some great ideas and really having an impact. The teachers were so excited. She texted me this afternoon and said, I've got a lot of excited teachers. It was like Christmas for them when we brought the easel and carts over to their school today. So we're very happy about that.
Thank you, Alice.
Seeing that there are no more questions or comments on this topic, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We will move on to the first read, Governing Board Policy IJL regarding library materials selection and adoption.
Tonight, we have Carrie O'Brien from Gus Rosenfeld with us to introduce the proposed policy in response to recent state legislation. Carrie, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel. President Sanowski, Vice President Hartwells, and members of the board, before you tonight is the first read of policy IJL, which will bring the district into compliance with statutory changes which require 7-day notice to parents of the 60-day review period of review of intended purchases of library books. There is also optional language, which would be a policy decision of the board to make, not required by state law, regarding the criteria by which library materials would possibly be removed. I'm happy to answer any questions.
At this point, because there is some additional supplemental material, can we take a few minutes to just review through this information right now?
Sure, and was that provided to Dr. Hartwells? Okay, perfect, great, yeah, just apologies, the reason why it couldn't be provided ahead of time was open meeting law restrictions, so I think just a couple minutes for everybody to have the time to read through the optional language.
Right, it's 2 sentences. Yeah. Is there a way to throw this up on
It
a
looks
large
like
screen
there
for
is.
the public to see?
I apologize. I've never done this before. Okay.
It will be made available to the public as well, right? Okay,
Right.
good.
Right, so the text that is in red is language that's being stricken from the policy. And then the language, I apologize, in blue is the language that's being added.
Could we also show the optional language, since I think that is the only language that wasn't, okay, perfect, thank you.
I have a question. Is now an okay time to ask?
Yes, yes, go ahead, Vice President Dr. Wells.
Has the optional language been reviewed by council?
Dr. Hartwells, Jennifer did review that language. And again, it is a policy decision of the board whether they would want to adopt that in policy IJL. It's not statutorily required to bring the district into compliance.
I understand. Okay, but Ms. McLennan did take a look at it before I received it.
Yes, she has.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Greenberg?
Yes, so obviously IJL came up because of the amendments we see in blue here, state statute, and then in my review this weekend, I realized that perhaps a little late because it was this weekend, but I realized that perhaps we may want to add in material information for the same reasons that we added in information in the policies we'll be doing our second read of. Mainly the language, the optional language is taken from case law, from Supreme Court and Ninth Circuit case law and District of Arizona case law, so it's not something that's readily accessible to staff. And I think, we've had the discussion with our staff and with community members who serve on these committees about, what can and can't be done, some of those legal limits. But I do think it's worth putting in here just so that the community is and our staff are able to point to something. So again, I do want to be very fair and transparent on this. This is completely optional language. It is entirely up to the board. Frankly, all languages, because even if we didn't add this, we still comply with state law. But in terms of whether we want to highlight this point, as a reminder of what the current state of the law is, and as something that's readily accessible to staff. So I put it together, so I do support it, but if the board does not, completely understand.
Any other comments on this? It's getting pulled up onto the large screen. Thank you for your patience.
And this version assumes that all the edits are what council has already recommended, so the additional highlighted portions that exist below, just below there, are the optional language points.
So the optional language would be the text with the right slash, the slash to the left.
Okay. That's it. Thank you, Board Member Greenberg. Vice President Dr. Hart-Wells, did you have any comments to make on these suggestions? Noting that this is the first read and 2 reads and an action is required to approve anything.
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, Council. All right, we are going to move on to the consent agenda portion of this agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor to approve the consent agenda as written, say aye.
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 That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Let's move on to our action items. We're going to start with the second read and approval of revisions to the high school planning guide for the 2023-24 school year.
Dr. Dodds-Karen will be reviewing those, and she has just 2 slides.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Menzel. Good evening. Jeez. President Sanowski, Dr. Hart-Wells again in the cloud, governing board members, Gladys, those of you remaining, hello. I'm here tonight to share with you a few updates since we met before Thanksgiving. We've taken another look as part of our process just for things related to grammar. So this is a very large document. We will continue to refine our grammar and spelling before it goes to translation and publication, but we did want you to be aware of that. In this process of looking at grammar, we identified the need to update the civics test requirement for House Bill 2636. On page 9, you will see a strikeout of previous language and new language that has been added to reflect the passing percentage for students beginning in the class of 2026. Additional refinements that we have put into place are going to be more significant to you as we reflect on when we were last together. We have solicited further input to changes that we were recommending for our science course sequencing. We met again with various stakeholder groups, including our teachers, our counselors, APs of Ed Services, and our high school principals. On this slide, you will see environmental science, AP environmental science specifically. We've moved that back to a year 3 science. Historically, this was a 3rd year course. And during that standards review process with the work group, working with the AP environmental science teachers originally, it was moved to the 4th year, but in these past few weeks, Johanna Kaiser, our science coach, has continued to work with our AP environmental science teachers, who all agree that we can move that back into a year 3 science with a few additional science standards that they'll pick up. We've also updated some science graphics to include AP environmental science with the prerequisites and appropriate symbols. Those have been shifted as well. We also adjusted some of the language throughout the science section. So based on the input from our stakeholder groups, we have replaced required with recommended for our science pathways. And that was probably some of the biggest feedback that we took away from our conversation with you, and then again, further meetings with our stakeholder groups. This change will lead us to removing that waiver or that counselor form that we had created when we first took this to planning guide and the counselors gave us some feedback. The form emerged, but now we've taken that away because we've moved away from required to recommended on our course pathway. We've also removed the year, if you will, language that was in the required science sequencing. Again, because of being recommended course sequencing, we have changed it to their actual domains. And we did that because we think it's important to inform our community, our students specifically, and align with the language that is used in the colleges and universities. So rather than year 1, year 2, year 3, we're looking at if it is a life science, etc. We've also updated prerequisites, specifically to chemistry. Chemistry does have a prerequisite of the completion of algebra or concurrent enrollment in algebra. That was added. Finally, our final step, pending your approval of our planning guide and these recommendations, would be to schedule site visits to carry on further conversation. We want to run them as sort of like a focus group. While we've met with the different stakeholder groups, we've met with them all basically individually, other than counselors and APs of Ed Services who are part of the planning guide committee work. We've met with principals through a Teams meeting or through a principals meeting. We've met with counselors at their counselors meeting, but we'd like to have the science teachers, the administrators from the campus, and the counselors together around the table to talk about who are the kids on the campus and what does that recommended sequencing look like on their campus, what is their staffing, and what are their immediate options on their campus. What have been some of the historical practices that the campuses want to maintain for their specific programs as well. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Karen Dodds. Karen? Kim?
Or my mom, Karen Dodds.
Board Member Greenberg.
Dr. Dodds, first of all, I just wanted to thank you all again for your hard work on this. The governing board has made it very clear that we want to see improved test scores. That doesn't mean that the only thing we care about are test scores, but we do want, that is one of the measures of success, and we've set that out in our KPIs, and we've established that through our, I think, our mission values, mission, vision, and values throughout here. So I think that this is a really good first step, and I'm just repeating this here so for the benefit of the board, because we can't talk at any other time, and for the benefit, I assume, perhaps of the public. But you know, I really go back to Mark Tucker's work and what we discussed there about how we establish a gateway, a specific goal that we want pretty much every student to pass through at that 10th grade or 11th grade level and build an entire system around that. And my primary concern, you know, yes, there's staffing issues. Yes, there's questions of, is this the right sequence and this, that. I mean, that's always going to exist. There's always those issues. I think the primary issue, the challenge that I see here is the lack of a systemic change across K-12 in order to see this through, because I do agree that eliminating, these prereqs is beneficial in a way, and I've read through some of the ACT's own studies about how, students who take the more rigorous courses, no matter how poorly or well they do in those courses at school, still receive some benefit on test scores. But I think really what I would like to see is this work that's been started here grown out to all of our core classes, and frankly all classes we have, so that we have a clear systemic approach, and that students, rather than having to get rid of prereqs, the average student has actually accomplished what would otherwise be prereqs by the time they enter high school. And I think that really speaks to me from what we were assigned reading as board members from the superintendent, but it speaks to me from how those other high achieving systems have been able to go from low performing or struggling, and I don't think we're a low performing school. We're clearly above average on national and state metrics, but how you go from where we are now to really being top tier nationally and internationally, not just in Arizona. And that's really my point, is I think, wow, you guys know what you're doing. You guys have the expertise. Look at how much you're able to accomplish in developing a clear sequence of, I think this is really what high school needs to look like in the science world in order to accomplish the goals that the board set. So now, how do we build this up K-12? And again, as I mentioned in my email, if a piecemeal approach, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but if we have to get things done now and we can't do it systemically, that's the thinking, I get it, fine, I'll support it. But I do think until we deal with the elementary and the middle school as well, we're not really going to see the fruits of our labor from what this system really can deliver at the high school level. So I don't want this to be viewed as a failure or be viewed as, oh my gosh, we tried to do something innovative and push something and we did exactly what the board has asked us to do, and now they're just completely it's hard being on camera. They're just tossing it into the trash. What I want this to be is, wow, okay, we actually have a really good start here. There's tentative support, but it's about the systemic approach of getting elementary and middle and across all the broad spectrum of courses we offer. So I'm really supportive of this work. I'm really happy that it's gotten done. I'm glad we have a good start. And I think we can really, based on this, it demonstrates that we have the staff willing and capable to put in the time to develop something really awesome for our students and really just academically successful. So thank you. A bit of a crap sandwich, as they call it, but I just want you guys to continue this work because it's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Greenberg. Board Member Beckman.
Okay, building on what I said at the last meeting, I've spoken to countless people from ASU to U of A to Berkeley. And my opinion hasn't changed. I think we're putting the cart before the horse here a little bit. The fundamentals in our elementary and math grades are we have an obligation as a board to meet every student where they are currently, and I mean every student. And when I pull the current scores, I won't read them. We still have a lot of challenges. We're doing great, sure, in some areas, and all of our teachers are working as hard as possible. I want to make sure that we acknowledge them and all the work you do. But there are challenges still, and I don't think this is the right time. What I would like to see us do is continue this conversation further down the road. I'd like to see us set benchmarks for improvement in English and math at the K-8 level before we move into something more rigorous in the high school level. So I appreciate your time.
Vice President Dr. Hurt-Wells, would you like to chime in?
Yes, thank you, President Sanowski. Well, I will echo the systemic review, and I don't believe that that's lost on the administration, the need to do such a systemic review and assessment in order to make these changes that are proposed in the planning guide, high school planning guide, meaningful or more meaningful. I thank you for soliciting the feedback between the last read and this current read. I know you had a lot of meetings and got some constructive feedback, and from the proposed changes, the revision since appear to be responsive, and so thank you for doing that. I'm not sure I completely agree that this is all for naught. This is a high school planning guide, not a K through 5 or K through 8 planning guide. But I think the spirit of the comment is that tied to what Board Member Greenberg said, which is a systemic review. How do we take this as a framework and an entire system and elevate all levels? And that part of that comment is meaningful, I believe. But I don't believe that this is all for naught at all. I think it's good work, and I think you got to start somewhere, and this is the end point for our students, so we're going to work our way backwards from this. And I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into it. When you're out in front, sometimes you got to take a leap. So I appreciate all the hard work, and in particular being responsive to my comments as well. So thank you.
Board Member Greenberg. Your light is flashing. Do you want that off? Okay, you got it off. I concur with my colleagues' comments. I'll just say that I think a step in the right direction is a step, and we need to embrace that and be flexible enough to change it if it's not working, but also really address the foundational levels and push it up as well. So appreciate all the work that's been done on this, and this isn't going to bed. This topic isn't, this is just a start. So thank you again. Seeing that there are no other questions or comments at this time, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the revisions to the high school planning guide for the 2023-24 school year. Is there a second?
So move. Oh.
Nope, go ahead. I didn't make a motion, no. I'm at that point in the night where,
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So moved.
okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor to approve this, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
The motion passes 3-2. We are going to move on right now to our next action item, which is recommended increase to substitute teacher pay rates. And I believe Alexis will be leading that conversation.
Good evening, President Sanowski, governing board members, and Dr. Menzel. You have in front of you, as a result of our meeting on October 18th, where we increased substitute pay minimally, we have in front of you a recommendation to increase the substitute daily rates from the October 18th rate of $124 a day to $142 a day. Elimination of the tiered rates of pay, maintaining the $20 additional pay for Monday and Friday, and then increasing the rates for both permanent and long-term substitute rates to $165 per day.
Board Member Beckman, did you push your request? Okay. Are there any questions from the board members right now or comments? Vice President Dr. Hartwells?
No, I do not have any.
Okay, I would like to thank you and to all of those that were willing to take action to do something to improve this pay, because we all see when we get the personnel reports that the fact that hardworking teachers are having to cover for their colleagues when subs are not available. It's not the pay that's a concern for me, it's the time that they're spending, which is their planning time and their preparation time for students to cover another class as a substitute teacher or a guest teacher. So I feel like this action is, again, another good step in a better direction, and I hope that it fulfills the need that we're intending, and that is to attract high-quality substitute guest teachers into our district, and so that students can continue with their learning while their teacher of record is not present for a day. Seeing that there are no other questions or comments on that? At this point, I would like to make a motion to approve the recommended increase to substitute teacher pay rates. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor to increase the substitute teacher pay rates, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
There's no opposition, so that motion passes 5-0. Thank you. We're going to move on to approval of performance-based pay criteria for specified administrators. Are you reading it? Dr. Menzel.
So in your board packet, you have the performance pay goals for 4 cabinet officials whose contract call for performance pay of up to $5,000. Each of the 4 individuals has developed target goals that are tied to our KPIs. So they have other performance goals as well that are not included here. These are the ones that are tied to performance pay and aligned with our strategic plan and KPIs. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
I see. Vice President Dr. Wells, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I do not.
I would just like to add that I appreciate seeing the consistency of these SMART goals used throughout. SMART goals are measurable goals for targeted purpose. They seem to have substance, and I appreciate that. A big improvement from what I recall last year, some of the goals were. And all of these really do seem to focus around our strategic plan and supporting that. So again, that is greatly appreciated in my eyes. One more comment, Board Member Greenberg.
President Snowski, I just wanted to thank you for that comment. That is what I was going to say. I don't recall when I first joined the board or prior to that.
Is your mic on?
No, I think so. No?
No, I think so.
No. Hello?
No. Can I use this one?
We can hear you.
Go ahead.
Can you though?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, there we go. Yeah, see we go. Already, I'm not done yet. I mean, God. No. Just thank you for that comment. Before I joined the board and when I joined the board, I don't think we really had KPIs, and so having objectively measurable goals for our superintendent, our board, as well as our entire staff is very helpful. So thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. All right. Seeing that there are no other questions or comments at this time, I would seek a motion to approve the second read and approval governing, approval performance-based pay criteria for specified administrators.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And now we're moving on to the second read and approval of governing board policy BBAA regarding board member authority and responsibility. Carrie.
Hello again, members. My name is Carrie O'Brien. I'm again here for Jennifer McLennan. Let me get the policy up for you. So the first policy that's on second read for consideration tonight is BBAA, and these are discretionary changes to be made by the board. They're intended to comply with open meeting law, and they clarify the authority of an individual board member. I believe this is the same version that you reviewed at your November meeting, and it was presented for approval in compliance with policy BGB. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing and hearing none, at this time I would request a motion to approve the second read of the governing board policy BBAA regarding board member authority and responsibilities.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
I think she said aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to the second read and approval governing board policy BCC regarding board member requests for information. Carrie.
Board members, this is again the second read of this policy from the November meeting, and it's intended to clarify the requests of individual board members of staff members. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on this policy.
Thank you. Board Member Greenberg.
Just a reminder, there have been some constituent questions about this. I think it's fair to share it here. As a reminder, because board members don't have any outside of board meeting authority unless we give it to them, board members are always free to submit public records requests, just as any community member would, and this would not apply to that. This is a special privilege the board has agreed to confer onto board members that allows them to request information separate and distinct from what is allowed in a public records request. So this is a separate thing, and without this policy, really technically you would just be getting information via public record request or whatever was voluntarily provided to you.
Thank you, Board Member Greenberg. And to add, the last sentence says this requirement pertains only to an individual research request by an individual board member.
Correct, and that's not changing. That's
right.
same as before.
Right. Any other comments or questions on this proposal? Seeing that there are none, I would like to make a motion to.
President Sanowski, this, just quickly, this policy says it was adopted February 8th, 2022. I'm jogging my memory, but I don't know if you were here. There was a policy very similar to this before I even joined the board, correct? The 2-hour policy.
Correct. So it's the same exact policy as when we joined the board. The difference is that we did not have a mechanism in place for that, and what was found was that the previous wording was that the request shall be placed as an action item at the next scheduled for discussion, which just it wasn't feasible given the volume of requests that board members present. So now what we're specifying is you would have to, after your discussions with the superintendent, then say, okay, here's my written request, I want this there. And then
but there was the 2-hour.
But the 2-hour rule is the same, yeah. And I believe I've had requests for information stopped. I'm sure other board members have. You know, it's just our staff have a lot of work to do. So pulling tons of information, because again, the difference being public record requests, those are records that are already created. This request is saying, I want you to pull together information for me, perhaps from various sources, potentially create a new document, which was done, for example, when we first brought up KPIs last year. You know, what is all the data saying? Can you compile that for us? So that is an example of what BCC is supposed to cover.
Board Member Beckman, does that help answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just, when I was board president, I remember having to pull this policy out because we had a CFO at the time that was asked to do exorbitant amounts of research into areas of the budget that was during budget creation time, and it created kind of an overwhelming amount of work to where they couldn't get their work done. It was creating problem, friction. So, yeah.
I will continue with my motion to approve the governing board policy BCC regarding board member requests for information. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. And last action item of this evening would be the second read governing board policy DIE regarding audits, financial monitoring.
Board members, this is again the second read of this policy that came before you in November, and it is to simply remove the requirement that a board member sit on your audit committee, but it does allow a board member to sit on the audit committee. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing and hearing none, at this time I would like to make a motion to approve governing board policy DIE regarding audits, financial monitoring. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. At this point, we are going to call for future items to be placed on the agenda.
No.
No?
You moved to
I
governing
had
board.
the governing board reports afterwards. Okay.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
It was
but I
a
think
correct answer.
It doesn't matter.
What's that?
I don't think it matters, but I thought I had it
She
written
was
down.
saying a joke about no future items, but in fact, we
Oh,
were
that's
going
funny.
to governing board reports.
Got it. Governing board reports at this time. Governing board members? Board Member Greenberg.
Really quickly, a few things. It was great attending the Native American Summit here at Coronado High School, and thank you, Coronado High School, for hosting it. Really some amazing performances. I was only able to stay for about an hour and a half, but it went on much longer into the night. It was awesome seeing students and families there, and being able really to interact with professional artists and musicians who represent the community and go all over the world, and had some really fun stories about that. And so thank you, Sheila Cypress, for putting that together. I also met and spoke to Vector Solutions. As discussed in the prior board report, I turned over the information related to their specific programming on bullying and suicide awareness, mental health, sexual misconduct to our administration. I also spoke to a school district about the same size in Texas that uses their products with their students. They do it as a state requirement, an unfunded mandate. Isn't that fun? But they do it. They have to cover certain topics like bullying, drug use, sexual misconduct, and the like. So they use it there, and they also have a remedial school. So they use additional courses there. So I will provide that additional information to the administration, but otherwise I leave that in your hands. And finally, it was great attending the winter athletic banquet. I couldn't stay, unfortunately, for too long, but it's always fun when you see an athlete there that you used to babysit quite a long time ago now, right? So it's just really great. I mean, it really shows tonight, as well as all these events, really just show how amazing all of our students and staff are, and I think that's what makes SUSD a great school. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Board Member Greenberg. Board Member Beckman.
We all pretty much attended the athletic banquet last night, my last one, and it's one of my favorite events as we get to showcase and highlight students from all over our community and what they're doing academically and athletically. Tomorrow I will attend another Coronado Promise meeting as I continue my work for on the Foundation for the Charros, and the Coronado Promise is one of my favorite things that we have accomplished in that. But I wanted to take a minute, 2 seconds to speak to the community, and I'd like to thank our community, our staff and our teachers, and this board. It has been my honor to serve alongside you and to serve the community as a whole. But most of all, I'd like to thank our students. It's been one of the greatest privileges of my life to watch them grow and play a small part in empowering them with the knowledge to go out and hopefully change the world. And for that, I will be eternally grateful.
Thank you, Board Member Beckman. Vice President Dr. Hartwells? Do you have a board report?
I do not have a board report, but I will just take this opportunity to thank both Board Member Beckman and Board Member Greenberg for their work and their selfless work on the board the last 4 years. It's been an honor to serve with you.
Thank you, Vice President Dr. Hartwells. And I would like to conclude with my report. I did have the privilege to support the extraordinary and ongoing efforts of Anasazi Elementary and the district staff to create that K-12 IB pathway through the verification process Anasazi Elementary has been going through for some time. I had the privilege to join Board Member Beckman at the Kiva ribbon cutting ceremony, and I note the appreciation to the past and current governing board members in supporting this campus improvement work, because I do recall at one time this campus was a consideration for potentially becoming custom home properties. This end product is the example of the standard of excellence in our facilities our community, students, and employees deserve to work in. So congratulations to all the grounds, facilities, Kiva staff for their persistence and perseverance through this laborious process. Additionally, as an SUSD Governing Board representative, I had the opportunity to attend a 2.5-day national conference on active school threats with our Director of Security, Joshua Friedman. It was a very enlightening experience, I will say that. I think we have a lot we can learn, but I also think we are on the right track with prioritizing school safety in our district. Let's see, it was mentioned earlier that the Intertribal Cultural Night at Coronado High School. I know, Sheila, Cyprus ends up coming here and saying how grateful she is to the district for caring about our Indigenous student population in our district. I just can't acknowledge her efforts enough in the work that she's been doing, hard work behind the scenes for years. And this was the first, it was their inaugural event. It was acknowledged through tribal royalty, great food, fabulous storytelling through song, dance, and music. And it really presented both a local and a national tribal organization that I was not really aware of, all that continues to go on within the culture there. As mentioned by several board members, last night's banquet, something that stood out from last night's banquet was Dr. Bruce Johnson when he talked about the value of the team and recognizing how big our SUSD team really is and the importance of this team working together for the best interest of all of our students and their success. Again, thank you to the leaders who made that event happen. Thank you to the parents who support their student athletes. These students were exceptional, and I look forward to learning more about their successes as adults, as many of them will be going off to college next year. And I would be remiss to ignore this opportunity to again thank both outgoing SUSD governing board members, Patty Beckman and Jan Michael Greenberg. They have both served in many assorted capacities as governing board members, and I appreciate their many contributions to our district, many that go unnoticed. They have held assorted leadership roles, not just within our district, but also in our community. They have very high expectations for accountability, making necessary improvements to policies and practices to move all of us towards an improved, high-achieving, healthy, and future-focused district. I have appreciated their perseverance, their intelligence, and their bravery as they have really moved through some unprecedented time, administrative transitions, a worldwide health pandemic, all while trying to keep employees and kids learning and safe. So I appreciate you guys more than you know. In summary, as this calendar year ends, I'm appreciative of the many supporters of our district public schools, as was evident by our last election and the district additional assistance passed. But we also have consistent support throughout our district. Mr. Shapiro, who was here earlier, giving a brief historical perspective, greatly appreciate community partners like Mr. Shapiro. Thank you to the students who actively engage in their learning opportunities. That is what teachers hope for every day, and that is also another role that parents can play in supporting our district public schools. We have nearly 3,000 employees who are deeply invested into the success of our students, parents who work in partnership with our trusted professionals, and our many community partners, as I mentioned earlier, who continue to provide support through their treasures of time, resources, and expertise to benefit our students. We could not have moved beyond the chaos of our past without all of you. I wish you all a very healthy and happy holiday season and a great semester break.
To future items.
Future agenda items requested by board members. Are there any? Board Member Beckman and Board Member Greenberg do not have any they'd like to propose, okay?
Well, I mean, now that you mentioned.
No, that's okay. Vice President Dr. Hartwells, do you have any requests for future board agenda items?
I do not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. So it comes that time where we are going to, I will make a motion to adjourn this governing board meeting. Is there a second? Second. Motion and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
No.
We have
Aye.
the motion to approve 5-0. At this time, I'm going to ask board members Beckman and Greenberg to ceremoniously Gavel us out of this meeting at 8:49 PM. Thank you.